She looked me dead in the eye and said, "I have a date tonight." I smiled and said, "So do I." She didn't see that coming, and just like that, the game changed. My wife openly told me she was going on a date. I stayed calm and replied, "That's fine, I have one too." What she did after that made absolutely no sense, and I'll never forget it. "My name is Ethan." The air in the room still before she even spoke. She leaned against the kitchen counter with a glass of wine in hand, wearing that expression she used when she wanted to be seen as unbothered. A cool smirk tugged at the corner of her mouth. Then she said it. "I have a date." There was a pause just half a second too long, like she expected me to flinch, but I didn't. I smiled calmly, deliberately, then I set my glass down, looked her square in the eyes, and said, "Funny. So do I." That wiped the smirk clean off her face. I watched the breath catch in her throat, so subtle most people would have missed it, but I didn't. I knew her. I knew how carefully she played these games, and more importantly, I knew when her game had just flipped on her. For a moment, she stood frozen, blinking like she'd misheard me. I kept my tone level. No heat, no bite. That was the trick. You don't win these little emotional chess matches by shouting. You win by staying absolutely maddeningly calm. She tilted her head, still trying to regain her footing. "Oh, really?" "Yeah," I said simply. "Tomorrow night." She opened her mouth, maybe to throw out a snarky comeback, but nothing came. Instead, she nodded slowly, like she was trying to convince herself she was still in control. Then she sipped her wine as if that would buy her composure back. What she didn't know, or maybe didn't want to admit, was that something in me had shifted. This wasn't retaliation. I wasn't trying to one-up her. I wasn't even angry anymore. That's what scared her. Because what do you do with a man who doesn't play your game, who smiles while you raise the stakes, and then calmly matches your bet? We sat in silence for a moment, pretending to scroll our phones. Her thumb barely moved. She wasn't reading anything. She was watching me from the corner of her eye. The way you watch a fire you thought you'd put out. It wasn't always like this. There was a time when our laughs echoed off these walls, when her touch felt like home, and not like a maneuver. But somewhere along the line, things turned surgical. Measured, every word, every glance, wait for effect. She'd say something cryptic. I'd respond with quiet patience. It became a rhythm, an unspoken standoff, and now, here we were both holding torches, circling the edges of something we built together. I stood up first, stretched, walked toward the sink to rinse my glass. "Who's the lucky lady?" she asked, her voice thinly veiled with sarcasm. I turned slightly, just enough to look at her over my shoulder. "Does it matter?" I didn't wait for her reply because if it mattered, she wouldn't have brought up her own date first. If it mattered, she would have sat me down and asked what was happening to us instead of dropping a line like that, just to watch it explode. As I dried my hands, I caught her watching me in the reflection of the window, not saying a word, just watching. Her shoulders were a little tenser now, her lips pressed tight. I almost pitied her, almost. Because deep down I recognized the fear crawling up her spine. This wasn't just a line in our ongoing war. This was the first time she didn't know what came next. And maybe neither did I. But I knew one thing for sure, whatever this was, wherever it was heading, I wasn't going to blink first. It's strange how a bookstore can feel like a sanctuary, when the rest of your life's a battlefield. The next day, I left the apartment without a plan, no destination, no agenda. Just the weight of a house that didn't feel like home anymore. I walked for blocks, letting the city hum around me, until I found myself standing in front of an old brick storefront with foggy windows, and a weathered sign. Hunter and Birch Books Plus Cafe. I'd passed it dozens of times before, never gone in. But something about the quiet warmth behind the glass pulled me in that day. Inside, it smelled like old paper and cinnamon. A soft jazz record played from a turntable in the corner. People were scattered between aisles and armchairs, noses deep in stories they'd chosen over real life. And for the first time in weeks, I let myself exhale. I walked past a table of staff picks, grabbed a novel I didn't recognize, and headed to the cafe in the back, ordered a black coffee, no cream, no sugar. Just something bitter to match the taste in my mouth these days. The barista smiled as she handed me the mug. She looked like someone who belonged in a place like this, effortless, calm, grounded, hair pulled back in a loose bun, sleeves rolled up. No fake cheer in her voice, just present. "You look like a man in need of a quiet corner," she said gently, nodding toward the window seats. I half smiled. "That obvious. Pain always is," she replied without pity. I found a seat and let the silence wrap around me. For the first time in a long time, I didn't have to perform, didn't have to guard my words. The air felt different in here, not charged, not thick with tension like back home, just still. The pages of the book blurred. I wasn't really reading, my eyes were moving, sure, but my mind was replaying that moment. Lauren, wineglass in hand, saying those three little words like she was announcing the weather. "I have a date." I could still hear the pause that followed. Could feel the air stiffen like it was waiting to see who'd make the next move. And how I'd smiled. Not because I didn't care, but because I finally realized I had a choice in how much of me I was willing to lose. I took a sip of coffee, and looked out the window. Couples walked by, holding hands. Strangers laughed about things I'd never know. Life moved on out there, even when mine had stalled. Refill. I looked up, it was her again, the barista. Sure, I said, sliding the mug toward her. She poured, then hesitated. Sorry if this is too forward, but whatever's sitting on your shoulders, it's heavy, you might want to put it down for a while, just while you're here. I nodded. More grateful than I could say. I'll try, I admitted. Even if just for a chapter or a coffee or the space between heartbeats. The second time she spoke to me, it wasn't with a smile. It was curiosity, soft but honest, that carried her voice. I'd been sitting in the same chair for nearly an hour, nursing my second cup of coffee. Still pretending to read. My eyes flicked back and forth across the page like they were on autopilot. But nothing was sticking. She approached quietly, wiping down the table beside mine with a cloth that smelled faintly of lemon. I didn't look up, but I felt her presence. The way you notice someone looking at you when your back is turned. You look like a man trying to forgive someone. I finally lifted my gaze. She wasn't being invasive, there was no judgment in her tone, just observation. Like she'd seen enough people pass through this cafe to know the shape of regret, when it sat in front of her. I studied her for a moment. Her name read Maggie, simple name, honest, like her eyes. I gave a small laugh, not because I thought it was funny, but because the truth of it hit harder than I expected. Yeah, I said, that obvious. She shrugged. Settling on the edge of the opposite chair, careful not to intrude.